Question 13, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. President. I beg to ask the Minister for Enterprise what the vires are for the £250 subsidy for students returning to the Isle of Man.
The Minister to reply, Mr. Scaly.
The Isle of Man Government is offering a one-off contribution of up to £250 per person per week for returning residents travelling to the island that are required to self-isolate towards the cost of finding alternative accommodation. This offers individuals the option to stay somewhere else during the 2-week period of self-isolation, avoiding the need for others in their households to isolate, or alternatively, a member of the household who needs to work to be accommodated outside the isolated household. In doing so, registered accommodation providers receive some additional much-needed income, the £250 per person per week paid by government directly to the registered accommodation provider. These payments are made under the vires of the Tourism Act 1975.
Supplementary, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Could the Minister perhaps explain a little bit more about how the Tourism Act 1975 enables this subsidy to be made? Because I can't quite see that. And also, would he explain how the policy has shifted from March and April, when the policy was to charge people £850 for returning residents to stay for 2 weeks in hotel accommodation, and now we're subsidising it to the tune of £500?
Minister to reply.
Yes, this actually falls under the Tourism Act, Section 2(1) of the Act, which is quite broad, and this decision on the 12th of December to be implemented from the 19th of December to the 31st. It's a short window. Clearly, the Lord has highlighted students, but this is obviously all residents, because we could not clearly single out one particular group of people returning. So in terms of the policy, that was purely a change from what happened previously, but we felt that this was right and appropriate given the influx that was about to occur.
Honourable Member Dr Allenson.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Would the Minister agree with me that the £250 donation by the Manx Solidarity Fund for those students in need of extra assistance on return to the Isle of Man, having to self-isolate for 14 days, was very welcomed, particularly given the way that certain students have been demonised on social media trying to return to their homeland over the Christmas period? Thank you.
Minister to reply.
Good admired actor, and I thank the Honourable Member from Ramsey highlighting the Manx Solidarity Fund, who I'd like to put on record my thanks for all their support that they've given during this pandemic, and they have stepped up here without, I might add, any solicitation or encouragement from government, and I think that highlights the spirit of the community of the Isle of Man, and this is obviously the business community that have provided support. So yes, it is very, very welcome, and yes, some of those students have actually been demonised, as the Honourable Member has highlighted, and we believe that this is the right and appropriate action at this particular time.
Supplementary, Mr Morehouse.
Thank you, Mr President. The support is generous and well received, but in terms of if one of these students were actually to get a positive test and the clock was to go back to day one, if they're on maintenance support and had limited funds, will the department be able to step in and provide that additional funding that is required in those circumstances?
Minister.
Clearly this is widening now from the vires, but yes, obviously there is obviously a system in place, and if there are any symptoms, as has happened a number of occasions, do call 111, and they'll have the test, and there are systems in place to provide appropriate support from a health and economic point of view.
Mr Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. President. Section 2(1) of the Tourism Act 1975 says that the Department shall maintain, encourage, develop, protect, promote and facilitate tourism into and from the island to the best advantage of the island. Can the Minister firstly explain how paying it to Manx residents is actually supporting the tourism industry as it was envisaged in 1975? And secondly, how does he justify it as being fair to those who have travelled before and been charged the privilege, or after this narrow window?
Reply, sir.
Admired. What I can say with regards to the Act is that we consulted with the Attorney General's chambers, and he was satisfied that we had the powers to do this. And again, I would highlight that this was a fairly rapid decision. It was made on the 12th of December with an implementation of 1 week later. And again, yes, that was a policy change. I absolutely accept that. But again, I do believe once more this was right and appropriate.
Final supplementary, Miss Edge.
Thank you, Mr. President. Is the Minister aware that there are some groups of students who have got together and decide to isolate in a group, and the impact that that could have if one of them does test positive, that the rest of them have to isolate for the extra 14 days, which I think is where Mr. Morehouse is coming from, that it could go on for, if there's 4 people in the household, it could go on for well over a month. But the other question I'd like to ask the Minister is, what definition of a student is he using to award this? And is it a student that's currently in receipt of a grant, or is it a student that has previously had a grant that's still not repaid? Thank you, Mr. President.
Minister to reply.
First of all, let me just correct what I said earlier. That was the 19th of November, not December. Apologies for that extra. With regards to the Honourable Member's queries and questions there, I'm not aware of student groups congregating, and if that is the case, I would expect probably the Manx public to respond to that and advise the appropriate authorities, because that's not what is intended. They are permitted the 1 hour of exercise, which is clearly both for their mental health as well as their physical health, and I think that is appropriate. But they are wearing masks, and this gets back to the point the Honourable Member from Ramsey highlighted, where they are sort of being victimised by certain members of the public, which is I think, wholly unfair. What I would say is that, from my experiences, they've been very responsible, as have the 600 to 700 or so that are travelling on and off this island since June. And I'd say we have to say, as being termed, the Great Manx public have been very cooperative, and they have been here. They are not students. I just highlighted in the original answer, this is for returning residents for this period only. It is not specifically for students, so there is no definition there.